The very moment the moving truck rumbled into the neighborhood, Karen was already on high alert. From behind her lace curtains, you could see the silhouette of her head turning sharply. Eyes glued to every box being lifted out of the truck. She had that notebook in her hand, the same one she always carried around like it was some kind of HOA law book. And her pen was already scribbling furiously, as if writing down infractions before the first piece of furniture even hit the ground. Every step the movers took, she was there snapping pictures with her phone, zooming in, angling, trying to capture something she could twist into a violation. You could almost feel her energy radiating from across the street, like she was ready to pounce the second she thought she had proof of wrongdoing. Neighbors peeked from their driveways, shaking their heads, already knowing Karen was about to turn a normal moving day into a scene. And sure enough, she stepped out, sunglasses perched on her nose, striding across the lawn like she was a sheriff arriving to make an arrest. Clipboard clutched tight, her voice rising before she even opened her mouth. Karen didn't waste a single second before planting herself right in front of the movers, arms crossed, clipboard raised like it was a badge of authority. Her tone was sharp, dripping with fake politeness as she demanded to know what unauthorized activity was happening on the property. She started pointing at the truck, then at the boxes, rattling off imaginary HOA rules as if she had them memorized, her words spilling out faster than anyone could respond. The movers glanced at each other, confused, clearly not used to being interrogated like criminals for just doing their jobs. She tried to corner me next, waving her notes in my face, saying things like "This hasn't been approved, and you're in violation of Section 12. It was the same Karen routine everyone had grown tired of, but this time she looked more determined, like she was on some personal mission. Her voice carried across the street, loud enough to make sure every neighbor could hear her accusations, almost as if she wanted an audience for the drama she was staging. And with her phone already in her other hand, it was clear she wasn't just documenting, she was preparing to escalate all day. Her voice instantly switched into that panicked, exaggerated tone, the kind people use when they're trying to sound like victims. She told the dispatcher there were suspicious people on the property, moving things out without permission, and she demanded officers come immediately. She made it sound like a burglary in progress, lowering her voice for effect, as if she were single-handedly protecting the entire neighborhood. The movers just stood there, stunned, watching this woman spin a story out of thin air. I tried to cut in, to tell her she was overstepping, but she held up her hand like a stop sign, waving me off while continuing to talk louder into the phone, emphasizing words like trespassing and illegal activity. You could almost see the satisfaction on her face, like she was savoring the power of having the police on their way. A few neighbors edged closer to the street, whispering among themselves, some rolling their eyes because they knew her reputation, others curious to see how far she would go this time when the flashing red and blue lights turned the corner. Karen's posture straightened as if she had just summoned backup to enforce her rule. 2 police cars rolled up slowly, the officers stepping out with that calm but serious look, scanning the scene to figure out what was going on. Karen wasted no time rushing over to them, waving her clipboard like it was evidence in a courtroom. She spoke fast, pointing at the moving truck, then at us, layering her story with urgency and dramatics, trying to paint the picture that strangers were looting a house in broad daylight. The officers listened politely at first, nodding as she went on, but their eyes kept drifting back to me and the movers, who clearly weren't acting like criminals. One officer asked a few basic questions, but Karen kept cutting in, raising her voice, insisting that she knew the rules of the community better than anyone. She wanted the cops to act right then and there, to stop us, to remove us, to make an example of what happens when someone doesn't bow down to her version of HOA law. You could sense her anticipation, as if she thought she had finally won before. The officers could take another step. My wife walked forward with a calmness that immediately shifted the atmosphere. She wasn't rattled by Karen's shouting, nor by the police presence, and she didn't raise her voice to match the chaos. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out a slim leather wallet. Flipping it open to reveal her military ID. The sunlight caught the card just enough for the officers to see the seal. The rank and the unmistakable proof of who she was. For a brief second, the scene froze. Karen's words cut off mid-sentence. The officers' expressions changed from cautious to respectful, and the whispers from the neighbors fell silent. My wife didn't need to explain anything. The ID spoke louder than any defense I could have given. One of the officers leaned closer, nodded, and immediately his whole demeanor shifted. His shoulders squaring as if acknowledging someone who had earned his respect. Karen, on the other hand, was frozen in place, her hands still mid-gesture, clipboard dangling, eyes darting between the card and my wife's face. The smugness she carried only moments before drained away as reality finally caught up to her performance. Karen's face went pale the moment she realized what she was looking at. The authority she had been clinging to vanished instantly, replaced with a stiffness in her expression that betrayed her shock. Her mouth opened slightly as if to argue, but no words came out, and the hand gripping her clipboard began to tremble just enough for everyone to notice. The officers didn't give her the chance to recover. They turned their focus entirely to my wife, speaking with her directly, their tone now carrying the kind of respect Karen had been demanding for herself just minutes earlier. One of them even gave a subtle nod, the kind that signaled acknowledgement of service, while the other jotted down a few notes with none of the urgency Karen had been trying to create. The neighbors who had gathered at the edges of their lawns were no longer watching us, they were watching Karen, and the shift in energy was undeniable. The woman who had marched across the street so confidently was now standing stiff, her sunglasses unable to hide the panic in her eyes. She looked like someone who had been caught in her own trap, frozen under the weight of her own lies.